think what I really liked about it is that there's the main couple, there's the main story, but there's also about the family dynamics as well, and their stories interweaving. Can you tell me how each story or each sort of journey for each character in this film connects with you personally?
That's an interesting question. I think, I mean, like starting from it's been different struggles and different joys with each character in a certain way. You know, some characters were harder to write, some were easier, like Mumtaz's character, for example, and Biba. Both, I think, both of these girls were probably the easiest to write. They came in very quickly to me, you know, on the first draft, and they stayed pretty much, you know, the core of the characters was very easy to find for me, and they were so exciting for me. Mumtaz is a lot of reflections of a lot of women in my family who I've seen many times, seen them realize that their personalities are perhaps too big for the family that they're in, you know, so they have to make themselves a bit smaller for the men around them, consider them to be palatable, you know. Even Nuchi, the sister-in-law, for example, you know, she's a big personality, but she kind of keeps it contained, and you can see in spurts here and there that whenever she gets a moment to shine, she really has a lot of presence, and she runs the house like a pro. But she makes sure that she does it in a way that doesn't ruffle any feathers because she has to. And she uses her voice very sparingly, you know, but when she does, it's that much more powerful. And for me, of course, particularly her character in the climax, you know, has that outlet, which is perhaps the most cathartic for me to have her, at least one character, sort of allow her to say whatever she's really thinking and whatever we're all thinking, to allow her that moment of courage was particularly cathartic for me. Heather was the toughest to write because he's incredibly introverted in a sense that, you know, he would just barely ever speaks what he's thinking, and you know, has just these deep-seated issues with his own self and in his relationship with his father, in what he seeks in terms of wanting and avoiding his own desires at the same time, you know, and sort of being in that conflict throughout the film, and also just not being the brightest kid on the block, you know. So really, just, you know, him having an empathetic look at the women around him, sort of his big redeeming quality. You know, there's not much else about him as a character which is impressive, which is what I wanted, but that makes a character very difficult to write. And so it was a struggle to get him to the point where we got him eventually. And particularly, you know, I'm glad that Ali Junejo, who's the actor who plays him, joined me in the struggle and really sort of took the character and made it his own.
Yeah, it was lovely to see that on screen. I read that you are inspired by the transgender community you found in Lahore. What does your inspiration from them stem from? Like, why do they inspire you?
I don't know if inspiration is the right word.
Okay, sorry.
I think I was able to see, I had a journey of sort of, you know, being on the outside of just existing as a cisgendered male guy, looking at trans people with this, you know, looking at them as the other first, because they exist. They're a very prominent part of Pakistan. You know, they're in public spaces. You know, it's not a, since I was a kid, I remember seeing them everywhere. And sort of looking at them with this outsider lens, and then looking at them with a certain level of fascination, and then really just sort of coming to a point where you're looking at them and being like, oh, they're really like us. You know, there's really nothing so strange or about them except one thing, that they're owning who they are in a very visible way, you know, and that's why they threaten us, because, you know, whenever we come across a person who's really being their true selves in such an open and obvious way, that reminds us of the fact that we are not, you know, and how where we have sort of, you know, learned and sort of bowed down to the conventions and just you know, we've forgotten that, you know, living a life of in a society like this with, you know, these many compromises is not the only way out. You can actually do what you want. And that, of course, you know, is a very exciting thought, but it's also a very threatening thought, and threatening particularly to the patriarchy. And I think when the idea of this film came about, that's why this Biba's character was just such an inherent part of the film, because it was about all of these conservative characters, and there's this one girl who was kind of an antithesis to everything that they believed in. Just her very existence was an antithesis to everything that they believed in terms of patriarchy, in terms of very binary way of thinking. And she challenged that, not just by her existence, but so vocally as well, and turned out to be figured out that she's probably the freest person in the film.
Yes, exactly. Joyland has brought a lot of different kinds of attention with the controversy in Pakistan, and then with the Oscars attention, which was incredible to be shortlisted. Throughout all of that, how have you been processing all of that attention?
I don't know if you get time to process it. That's the sad part. I think you don't really get time to process anything. You just kind of are pushed into one thing and then the other and then the other and then the other. And, you know, a lot of it is good. Some of it was really tough and traumatizing as well. and you just have to go with the flow, and I don't know, you kind of figure out what you're made of at the end of this. And I'm still not at the end of this, but I hope I do sort of learn a thing or two about myself in the process. It's just overwhelming, and you try to make sense of it, of the luck that you have to have it to be at the center of something like this, because you can't really take it too seriously. I don't think one should take that too seriously and be like, oh, I did this. I don't think that's the case. A bunch of people worked really, really hard on this and put a lot of heart and soul into the film. And that, of course, is a big reason for why this happened, but it's not the only reason. There is some stars did get aligned in the right way for us to be able to experience this, because there are many other films that don't get the kind of attention that we got, but are equally worthy of it. I personally was like hoping that I just remind myself of that constantly, to not let the attention get to my head and to not feel a big downer when this is over, which it will be in a couple of months, but I have to still keep going, and that this is not the part why I do what I do.
No, I understand that completely. Well, thank you so much for your time. Your answer,
Thank you.
you've been absolutely wonderful, and good luck with all of the press circuit and for the attention of Joyland.
Thank you so much, Carrie.